The public has been conditioned to expect a missile launch. This is a kinetic fantasy. While legacy platforms like the Royal Navy shadow Russian warships through the English Channel, the actual vector of attack is silent. The primary asymmetric threat is not an explosion, it is the severance of data. Critical infrastructure assessments from authorities like RUSI and CSIS confirm the systemic vulnerability of two systems: the network of undersea cables that function as the central nervous system for global finance, and the satellite constellations that coordinate military and economic logistics. The strategic objective is not to sink a fleet, but to create a blind Leviathan, a state with unmatched kinetic power, suddenly deaf and disoriented. A single severance event triggers a systemic solvency crisis as liquidity freezes. The choice is then binary: accept instantaneous economic collapse or initiate a kinetic response based on zero visibility, a launch-on warning protocol for the entire financial system. The public is conditioned to track adversary movements through a kinetic lens. Reports from the UK Ministry of Defence detail Royal Navy warships shadowing Russian naval vessels through the English Channel. This is symmetric strategy. It is visible, expensive, and for a state facing internal pressure, it is a liability. This is a deliberate misdirection. The primary vector of conflict is no longer kinetic, it is economic. Analysts at RUSI assess that prolonged military campaigns function as a national solvency crisis for Moscow. Each day of conventional warfare accelerates domestic financial instability, turning an expeditionary conflict into a systemic liability at home. This weakness forces a pivot. A state trapped in a solvency crisis cannot win a symmetric arms race. It is a mathematical certainty. The logical and only strategic path forward is to escalate asymmetrically. The adversary is forced to abandon the battlefield, where it is bleeding capital, and attack the financial architecture of its opponent. The economics of lethality have undergone a fundamental reset. Analysis from the Royal United Services Institute, or RUSI, quantifies this inversion. A modern main battle tank is a $5 million kinetic asset. The first-person view drone capable of achieving a mission kill against it is a $500 liability. This is a 10-to-1 cost asymmetry. The math does not lie. This is not an evolution in warfare. It is a mathematical phase shift in the projection of force. This cost curve collapse is termed the democratization of violence. The financial and industrial barrier to entry for projecting decisive kinetic effects has been obliterated. State-level lethality is now available at a non-state price point. This exact asymmetric blueprint is the protocol for financial conflict. An adversary does not need a symmetric military to challenge the U.S. They simply require a low-cost vector to attack the systemic liability of its debt. The drone is the model. The target is not steel armor. It is dollar solvency. Adversaries no longer plan for symmetric warfare. The battlefield has migrated from physical territory to systemic fault lines. Global instability is not a series of disconnected crises. It is a distributed network of proxy laboratories used for strategic reconnaissance. These are the gray zones, the designated staging areas for calibrating the primary attack vector. These military maneuvers are mirrored by financial warfare simulations. The public discussion in Europe, reported by El País, of liquidating U.S. debt holdings as a weapon against U.S. policy provides a clear blueprint for adversaries. It confirms the attack vector is viable and politically conceivable. The primary target is not military hardware, it is dollar solvency. Furthermore, RUSI analysts identify destabilization within Western-aligned nations as the next-generation proxy laboratory. Reports of foreign-influenced unrest in countries like Canada or South Africa are noted not as internal social issues, but as experiments in executing social and economic collapse at scale with minimal kinetic cost. The goal is to perfect a protocol for triggering a liquidity crisis before deploying it against the primary target. The existence of these proxy laboratories is predicated on a single irrefutable fact, confirmed by internal policy discussions reported in Politico: the recognized need for a fundamental reset of the U.S. banking system. This admission of systemic liability acts as a homing beacon. Adversaries are not guessing. They are observing, testing, and calibrating their attack on a target we have already marked for them. The gray zone is where they rehearse for the zero-sum endgame. The launch-on-warning doctrine is not a strategy of aggression. It is a protocol of mathematical necessity. Analysts at RUSI confirm its logic is simple. If early warning systems detect an inbound strategic launch, you fire your own arsenal before the enemy strike lands. Waiting for impact confirmation means you lose the ability to retaliate. The entire system is built on trusting your sensors. Now, introduce the fog of digital war. A systemic cyber attack, as modeled by CSIS, creates an asymmetric vector that bypasses kinetic defenses entirely. The objective is not to destroy the missile. The objective is to blind the radar, to sever the satellite uplink, to inject false data or, worse, no data at all. This forces a zero-sum choice. The commander, now operating blind, faces two catastrophic outcomes. Option 1, assume it's a system error and stand down. If wrong, the nation absorbs a full first strike, rendering retaliation impossible. Option 2, follow the protocol's core logic. Assume the blindness is the deliberate prelude to an attack and launch based on the last known data or the fear of what comes next. This is the endgame of asymmetric warfare. While the Royal Navy shadows Russian warships in the English Channel, the true engagement is against the digital nervous system of command and control. An adversary doesn't need to win a symmetric fight if they can force you to defeat yourself. While legacy media reports on Russian warships transiting the English Channel, the strategic analysis is focused elsewhere. According to UK Ministry of Defence data, these are shadowing operations. This physical posturing is a deliberate vector of distraction. The real probe is not kinetic, it is a calibration of Western response protocols and political trigger points, noted by analysts at RUSI. The primary asymmetric threat vector is the acknowledged fragility of the U.S. financial system. The need for a fundamental reset of the nation's banks is no longer a fringe concept. Concurrently, European policy circles now openly discuss the selling of U.S. debt as a geopolitical weapon. This transforms U.S. solvency from an economic metric into a military liability. The calibration shot. Within the next 12 months, expect a targeted, non-kinetic event against critical infrastructure designed for plausible deniability. CSIS modeling points to a high probability of a coordinated cyber-physical attack, causing a catastrophic, multi-hour outage at a major U.S. port's terminal operating system. It will not be attributed to a state actor. It will be framed as a software failure, but it is a demonstration of capability, a message that the logistical arteries of the U.S. economy can be severed without firing a shot.